Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video we're going to learn how to fly traffic patterns in the Airbus A350. Now first of all, let's get inside here in order to enjoy a little bit of silence. So in this video we've just spawned the aircraft on runway 20 center at Singapore Airport, and I'm going to take you through the entirety of the setup and everything you need to do to prepare, and then I'm going to teach you how to fly the traffic pattern in order to practice your landings and your manual flying skills. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start with the FMS setup, since that's kind of the most important thing here. Now let's get out that table, let's get out that keyboard, and then we can start our setup. So starting on the init page, we basically can enter any flight number. So I'm going to choose Singapore 359 over here. We are going to depart from Singapore and we're going to arrive in Singapore. The alternate doesn't really matter. The cruise level is going to be 1,500 feet above field elevation. Since Singapore is basically located on sea level, we're going to choose flight level 015 for our cruise. Now let's go ahead and do our standard setup. So IRS is already aligned. Departure, Singapore 20 center, and we can insert that. And for the arrival, we are going to choose runway 20 center as well. And you can basically choose any approach you want. In today's case, since we are flying visual traffic patterns, I will just choose the basic runway down there without any approach, which is just going to enter that extended centerline point here 4 miles from the runway. Okay, now that's the entirety of the flight plan that we are going to need. However, there are a few things that you can do. So, since we are sitting on the left seat, we're going to fly left traffic patterns. In order to take the beam position from where we're going to take the timing for our downwind, you could enter a radial. So you could go down here to the flight plan info, fix info, enter your departure runway. So that's going to be Singapore 20 center. And then we're going to enter a radial 90 degrees to the left over there. So that's going to be, well, current heading is 203, then minus 90 degrees, that's 113 for the radial. So 113, and by this we now have a nice little line that's going to remind us of where to start the downwind timing. Okay, now let's continue back to the init page. Nav aids, we don't need anything. Fuel and load, this is the next important thing, and for this let's head over into our load sheet. So normally, during simulator training on the Airbus A350, in the type rating, you would use a zero fuel weight of 180 tons with a fuel load of 20 tons. And that would be typical weight for flying traffic patterns in a simulated environment during airline training. So let's just take exactly these numbers. So that means we are going to have a zero fuel weight of 180 tons. The CG is going to be 30.9, and the fuel figure has automatically updated. Passenger number doesn't really matter, let's just enter 300 down here, and that's it. Now from here we can go right back into the takeoff performance, and we can just calculate that using the takeoff performance calculator down here. So we're going to synchronize the FMS data, we're going to synchronize the weather data down here, and then we just hit compute and send to FMS. Confirm that. And here we go. We are going to leave the packs on, contrary to our normal SOP when flying the aircraft, because the packs are going to be rather important over here for our flight. Okay, so that's the basic setup. Not much more that you need to do, however, something more that I recommend to do, and that's to go down onto the approach page and just enter your approach data already. So we've got a wind calm today. Our temperature is 15 degrees, and the QNH is 1013. We don't need any minimums, and we can decide on the flap setting. Today we're going to use config full. And this completes our FMS setup. So with that done, let's do a quick flight deck setup, ensure that everything's set as it's supposed to be. That mostly includes checking that the lights are on, but apart from that, the standard panel state is actually quite a good one. We can set our FCU down to an altitude of 1,500 feet. Ensure that the auto brake is armed. Ensure that the takeoff config is checked. Come on. Yeah, why don't you just trim yourself automatically? Okay, so set your takeoff trim. Provided that those switches work. This is a little bit, this could be improved a little bit. All right, close enough, that's gonna be fine. All right, and with that, we are basically fully set up for our flight. So flight plan on the right side, performance on the left side, and then we are ready to go. So how are we gonna fly the traffic pattern itself then? This is actually quite an easy one. So the pattern is basically flown in config 1+F. You do a normal takeoff, go out to about the acceleration altitude, which is 1,000 feet over here, start accelerating, then you pull the speed to maintain the S speed, flight directors off, bird on, aka select track FPA, and select the velocity vector, and then we're going to turn downwind. Now downwind today is going to be 023 degrees, with a left-hand turn, since we can definitely see better outside the left window. Once we pass a beam our runway threshold, which I've marked using the radial over here, we are going to start the timing, and we are going to do 3 seconds for every 100 feet above field elevation. So that means in 1,500 feet, we are going to do 45 seconds on the downwind, minus half the, or minus the actual tailwind component. I said half because we did that on the 737, my apologies. Okay. And then we're going to turn inbound, and I'm going to show you the entire rest throughout the procedure itself. So, if you're ready to go, let's release that park and brake, ensure the transponder is actually on, and then we're ready to go. Take off. So, stabilize engines. Manflex 72, SRS, runway, auto thrust blue. Thrust set. Passing 80, slowly return the side stick to the neutral position to reach it at 100, and 100 knots is checked.
Lead 1.
Rotate, pitch up to 12.5 degrees, positive climb, gear up. Alright, now we can follow the flight director. So, reaching and passing the acceleration altitude, flight directors off, track FPA, and velocity vector on. So, pull speed down to the S speed. So, set climb thrust. Level off in 1500, and then we can start the downwind turn. We are basically flying everything using 25 degrees angle of bank over here. And as we're turning downwind, we can set the downwind track to 023 on our FCU. And when the aircraft's flight path is stabilized, there are a few things that we got to do down in the FMS. First thing, reset the timer because we'll need it for the downwind timing. Then we can go down here, activate approach phase, confirm. When that is done, we can manage our speed. And next we go down to our flight plan page. Enter a direct to onto the runway waypoint, use course in, and ensure that the runway track is set down here. Okay, and with that done, insert, and now our flight plan and our FMS are configured. When you're flying the downwind, try to put the runway onto roughly the 2.5 mile ring down here on your ND. So you might have to open up the turn a little bit in order to adjust your downwind. Now, as mentioned, when we are passing the beam position, which by the way you primarily determine by looking outside, we're landing on 20 Senate, which is just over here. So when you're passing the beam position, start the timing for 45 seconds. And we can see that right now we've got a tailwind of about 2 knots. So we can do 45 seconds minus 2, 43 seconds. Round it, make it easy, 45. If the difference is significant though, like 10 knots or so, then you definitely need to adjust. So in case of 10 knots or tailwind, you'd use 35 instead of 45. Now we're passing the beam position, so let's start our timing. Timing is running. We can read our cross-track down here, so it's currently 2.2 miles, so I'm opening up just a little bit more. Maintain your altitude, unlike I'm doing over here. So about 10 seconds before turning final, or before turning base, we are going to extend the flaps in the config 2, so that's going to be at 35 seconds. And during the entire approach, so 35 seconds, flaps 2, during the entire approach you can basically use your VNAV deviation dot over here to help you with the guidance down. 45 seconds, turning base, and then we can go gear down. What is this doing? That's a bug. So, while we're turning base, we can set the runway track 203 up here on the FCU. So nicely established on the downwind track, then flaps 3 and flaps full. We can see the runway, we can see the puppy showing us that we're a little high, so it's time to start our descent. And at about half the ground speed we can start the turn to final using 25 degrees angle of bank. So we're doing 150 knots, that means at 0.75 miles with 25 degrees angle of bank you can start the final turn, and that should basically align you with the runway center line. I used 30 degrees, so we came a little bit short, but that way you can nicely adjust yourself. Fly yourself down into the puppies.
1000.
Checked. And here we are on the puppy, so just set the velocity vector to 3 degrees now, like this. Align yourself with the runway. Complete the landing checklist, which is complete except cabin. That's fine, because we don't have a cabin today. Alright, and like that, we are now nicely established on the final approach. And now, get yourself onto the center line, get yourself onto the puppy and stay on the puppy.
500.
And from here on, it's just going to be a normal landing, aka flare the aircraft at 30 feet.
400.
Aim for a touchdown within the touchdown zone on the center line.
300.
In an ideal case, down here on the aiming points. But according to Airbus
200.
theory, you don't need a touchdown exactly on the aiming point at 7 seconds from the moment you overfly the runway threshold. But don't time it, just land it. At 50 feet, look to the end of the runway, flare the aircraft based on the radio altimeter callouts.
100.
And below 200, don't try to chase the puppies in a wide-body
50.
aircraft.
40. 30.
So,
20.
flare,
10,
idle,
5.
touchdown. Lovely. So, spoilers, reverse green, decel. And remember, decel is red from the trend vector, not from anywhere else. So, a little bit of manual braking to slow it down. And that's everything there is to it, to flying a traffic pattern in an Airbus A350. It's quite easy. You can combine this with touch and goes. In case you want to fly a touch and go, just touch down, retract the flaps 1 notch. So if you did a config full approach, retract them to config 3. If you did a config 3 approach, retract them to config 2. Then set toga thrust, and once you're passing the approach, then you can just rotate the aircraft again, and the entirety of the procedure starts again from 0. And that's all there is to it. That's how airline pilots practice traffic patterns and practice manual flying skills and landings in an Airbus A350 in the real-world full-flight simulator. If you found this one interesting, be sure to leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you enjoyed this one, including all the setup of how I'm preparing for a pattern like this as well. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.